Gadget UK here again, this time a Game Boy Advance SP. You can see the screen's a bit dirty. There's a little scratch there, but the screen's not too bad actually. But there's a couple of issues with this. The first one is I think the right shoulder button's not clicking. There's no click noise, whereas this one, it is actually clicking. I've tested it, it's not working, so it's going to need a new tactile switch in there I think. And the other thing is if I switch this on, you see we've got a couple of see these little white dots. It's particles of dust, probably on the inside, just between the protector and the actual screen. So I need to deal with that. So to get inside the screen, I'm guessing I'm going to have to take out these little rubber bungs, a bit like you have to do in the DS Lite and stuff. There's a couple down here. The screws will be showing afterwards. Might be able to get some replacements for those. If you take them out carefully, you might be able to sit them back in, but to be honest, the way these are, you have to damage them to get them out. You just got to be careful how you do it. I'm just going to use something like this here and just sort of deliberately damage it, I think. There's no other way to get them out, I don't think, but then the screws will show underneath and we should be able to separate the top and bottom part of the screen here. Let's just hope we don't make it worse. They're actually quite durable, these rubber bungs. Actually, I've got them all out and I've not made a mark on them, which is surprising. I'll just show you what I've been doing. Is using this really fine point tool here and really carefully just trying to get to the edge there. It looks like you're going to damage it, rip it, scratch it, etc. But by the time it comes off, can you see that? There's not a mark on it. Not a mark at all. So yeah, they're really good those. I didn't expect that at all. So you can see here we've got what looks like 5 tri-wings. So I'll get that onto there and we'll take the screen apart I think. So after getting the screws out, you've got to put the screen upright like that so it's 90 degrees, and then the back part slides off. Can you see that? Just comes out like that. And then with the screen, you can see there's this ribbon here, so you've got to be really careful with this. What I'm going to do is just gently tip it down like that, and you can see right away here what part of the problem is. Can you see all this dirt? There's loads of dirt, and it's perhaps the seal has gone at some point, I don't know. I'll try and just rotate this around a little bit so you can see on the inside of the frame there that white crud. So all that's going to need cleaning off I think, and I'll clean this up, and then I might just get the vacuum onto the sides of this, see if I can suck the particles out without pulling this glass protector off, because as soon as you pull that off, obviously you risk damaging the screen, but you could get more dust particles in there as well. Actually, I found that with things like this in the past, just getting a vacuum onto the side of the thing, if you try and find where the gap is, where air's got in, sometimes you can suck out the bits of dirt and dust that way. So I got most of the muck off the screen there. The next thing I need to do is obviously clean this. I think the way I'm going to do that is hold it with this hand like this really carefully, this way, over here, so that I can then now get into the cavities around the edges. It's not the easiest thing to clean, I have to admit. Really, you're probably better off taking the whole thing to pieces in order to disconnect the screen. But I will be taking the base apart in a minute anyway to do the switch. But right now I just want to get all this dirt out of these grooves here that go around the screen. So I've been cleaning the inside of this frame, and I've just, as a final thing here, just getting this brush to get into the corners, just to make sure that there's no bits of dirt still stuck in there. But as you can see, actually that looks pretty clean all around. All the dirt's come out, and just to show you can obviously power this on while it's in this position here, just to make sure it's still working, to determine whether the dust's still there. And I can still see 2 little white dots down here. I don't think you can quite see that. Let me just see if I can zoom. Yeah, the light in here is not helping. That's probably good there. You can see what I'm talking about there, 2 little dots. Got a scratch up here, but yeah, I can't do anything about that. So they're pretty fiddly to work on these. There's about 4 or 5, I think there's 5 actually, or 6 tri-wing screws. There's one down there, corner points, and then 1 or 2 in the battery bay, I think, and then the back just comes off. There's 4 screws which I've took out actually that just hold or 3 screws that hold the PCB in, and then you can get the PCB out. Bear in mind you've got your ribbon attached down here. This is where things get a bit tricky, because let's see if I can show you. Yeah, the flat flex connectors here, so you've got to pull the little catches forward like that. Can't get that last one. I need to use a tool on this. Oh god. Yeah, so just change the angle slightly here so I can get to that corner there. There we go. Flat flex out. God, that was difficult. And it's much like the DS Lite actually in terms of the way it goes through and then it folds up. If I just turn this over, you can't really see it. Yeah, you can see it from there. The way the ribbon's like curled, it's like a curl that goes around the inside of the plastic hinge. So you've got to be very careful because you could really easily damage the ribbon, at either points here. I'll just move that across. We'll have a look at the PCB. Something's been spilt on this, I think. If you look down here, can you see it's pretty dirty around this inductor, around the power switch? So I'm going to clean up the PCB there. And again, got some dry joints or something there where some corrosions come through from the other side of the board. I'll perhaps put you on macro. So on macro here, you can see some corrosion here. I think that's an SMD component, I don't know. We'll clean it up with some IPA and cotton buds. And again, over this side, around the inductor here, it's very dirty, something's leaked. So I cleaned up the board with some IPA and a brush. You can see the fuse here was what was being affected by that liquid damage. So I'm going to get some flux on there, reflow that. There's a component down here again, there, that side. I'll reflow that component, and flipping over to the other side, I will also reflow the contacts on this inductor, that contact there because that's a bit corroded, and the switch contacts, and then just clean it up with some isopropyl and show you the end result. Well, that was pretty difficult to get off actually. You've got to just try and peel in one corner, just lift this edge here away from the screen in one corner, and as you just lift it, you'll start to see this black rubber, sticky stuff underneath just start to pull away on its own. You've got just sort of, it's hard to explain, but if you imagine this is still connected, you just pull it in one corner and it starts to just gradually come away until eventually, after about 5 minutes, you'll have one side off and a little bit here, and then it's just, do it the other way, and eventually it'll start to peel off, up until this corner. So you should have both these corners off at that point, and it looks like you're bending it, but actually, as you can see, it's pretty damn straight. It goes, it goes back. It doesn't stay in a bent position until eventually you get it to like this here. So you've just got it attached to the bottom part, and that's the hardest bit. And again, it's just a case of just pull it in one corner and gradually, and I'm talking over like minutes, literally minutes will go by until eventually the thing comes off, and then you can see a particle of dust there. So I just need to get that off with a microfiber. And that's what I'd recommend you do, but be really careful. You could use a vacuum. A vacuum's perhaps better, actually. But the problem with this sticky stuff is if you get any hairs or anything nearby, they'll stick onto the edges and overlap. So I would recommend that you go across this with a magnifying glass and inspect very, very thoroughly before you reassemble it. As you can see, just being sat here now, we've got several particles of dust settled on there. So I'll get the vacuum onto that. I'll clean this part up first, so that I'm ready to stick this back on. I think this side's not sticky, so I should just be able to use the microfiber carefully on this, and then store it upside down. There's a bit of dust there. Store it upside down like that in a position ready to then stick it straight back on after I finish the vacuuming. And before you vac it out, if you get any hairs and things stuck on the edges, which is sometimes what you get, you can see some here, it's like some fluff or something, just get a bit of insulation tape, just stick it over there like this, just peel it off, and you'll find, can you see that? It's pulled a lot of that white shit off there. So it just gets to any overlapping hairs, because you can get them. This is why people say this can get worse when you do one of these. But if you, let's say, get a piece of double-sided, a piece of insulation tape, let's say, and overlap it, don't worry too much about touching the screen unless you get like a really sticky insulation tape that leaves a residue. But as you can see, I've cleaned that up, so there's no overlap there from those bits of fluff. So it's just a case, like I say, just continuously re-inspecting until you've got it absolutely perfect. Get the vacuum over the top of it, and I'll show you. I'm not using the bristles or anything because I don't want any hairs or anything coming off the bristles. And it's a case of, you know, switching it on, just hold it really close over the top like that, go around in a few circles, re-inspect it, and then very quickly put this on. You know, as you've left this upside down this way so that dust's not settled on the underside, and then very carefully, you know, get it in position, stick it back on. So just a quick progress update here I'll show you after I've cleaned it up. Yeah, you can see the 3 white dots. There was 2 down here, there was 1 up here, they've all gone. There's just a little dot here, can you see? It's stuck on the edge of the inside of the, you know, the cover there. So that's the sort of problem that you get if you're not careful. This screen's not evenly lit. I don't know if you can see, it's like kind of looks more lit in this corner. It's not a great screen. It's not an AGS 101, but yeah, I'm pleased with how that looks now compared to as it was. So I think the next thing I'll do, well, I'll switch this off again, hang on. The next thing I'm going to do is swap out the trigger buttons actually. Yeah, so the next thing I'm going to do here is swap out these trigger buttons. They are standard tactile switches. Now they've got supports on the front, can you see that? But if you look at the case here, I was just wondering whether I could use ones without the supports on, and I think I can, because the buttons rest on these pillars here on the inside. As far as I can see they do, yeah, they pretty much make a pretty snug fit there. So I think those will be okay. I'll just get some of my replacement tactile switches in there. We'll see if it works. So there you go, switch replaced and cleaned up, switch replaced and cleaned up. The interesting thing with these compared to some other systems is you can't really swap out, well you probably can, but you can't easily swap out these buttons. You can see they're soldered in the 4 corners, I think. There's little surface mounted assemblies here, you know, it's just a piece of metal basically by the looks of things that's makes a contact with the thing underneath. You might be able to swap them out with something similar, but they're pretty low profile, so yeah, in years to come those could be an area of concern on these Game Boy Advance systems. So the final thing I need to do now really is just reassemble this. So I did have to take the screen apart about 3 more times actually, just because there was still specks of dust in there, but using a piece of insulation tape, just dabbing them off with this, especially the fluff around the edge, because the last time I did it was a load of fluff down here, and when it was switched on, the whole bottom of this here lit up like a Christmas tree. But as you can see, that's perfect now, absolutely perfect. There's not a bit of dust or anything in there. So the insulation tape trick does work well. The other thing I'll point out here as well is when you take the screen, you know, the cover off to get to the screen, you know, you've separated this cover here from the screen. If you want to try and use like a microfiber, problem with that is if you get too close to the edges where the sticky stuff is, you'll stick fibres onto the edge, and then you've got to use the insulation tape. So there's a bit of that, you know, sort of rinse repeat. The other thing is if you use any liquid, even, you know, initially I use water, just a tiny bit of water on the end of there just to wipe it where there was some marks and things up there, and I got that off. But then when I switched it back on, up here was a slightly shade of it's like a dark tint than the rest of it, and I found that if you just wipe the whole thing, you can get sort of patterns and things, you know, from wiping it. It's a pain in the arse. So I ended up just putting a tiny bit of IPA. Now IPA sometimes reacts with certain plastics and things, but I've done these before actually with IPA. You just get a tiny little dot of IPA, wipe it, it goes to a funny colour, it goes all black, but then as it evaporates it goes back to the normal colour again. And as long as you spend a bit of time and just go, you know, I think you've got to go that direction actually, from left to right on the screen itself. You can feel it's like little rungs or grooves or something. It must be little slot, you know, lines that are sort of moulded into the protector there that go that way. You'll find that after doing that for a minute or two, you can get it that when you switch it on, let's say you get an even colour there, you know, you can solve that problem where you get like an intensity problem. So yeah, those are those two few things there are what you need to do. The other thing is, when I took the screen out here, there's something else I'll point out I didn't capture on camera. When you've got the screen out, you've got the cover off here and the screen's just flowing out the back. If you just pull it too hard, you could either damage the ribbon, yeah, or what I did actually, I thought I'd damaged the ribbon, but I hadn't. But I had lines coming up and down the display. I thought, oh god, I've damaged the ribbon. And then I thought, well, actually, maybe, it looks okay. I inspected the ribbon; it looked okay. And then I had to take, the bottom part apart here to get to the PCB. Disconnected the flat flex, put the flat flex back in. It worked fine. So you can, if you're not careful, you can either damage the ribbon or pull it out of the flat flex connector inside, or even damage the flat flex connector if you're not careful. But I just thought I'd point out those few things really. But yeah, I think the end result speaks volumes really. It's like the only thing I'm not happy about, but I think this is inherent with this particular revision of screen, where you've got a bit more light down here than anywhere else on the thing. Can you see, if you get it at an angle there, you can see it quite clearly. But it's been like that since I got it. My understanding is they've only got one LED, I think, that's got and there's a piece of metal, reflective metal, and it's that reflects it up the screen. So I don't know. Maybe they're not all as bad as that. But actually, I'm pretty pleased with it. I'd certainly use that as a main working system without a problem. So in summary, when you're taking those bungs out, don't worry too much about the bungs, because you can actually fit those back in without any issues at all. But what you do need to pay attention to is actually the plastic. It's the actual case itself. That's the thing that can be misformed. You can make little nicks and marks in it if you're not careful. But there you go, all reassembled. It looks good as new. So as you can see, the screen's looking really good there now. The shoulder button's working. I'll show you that. Just start this. Yeah, that's RB. As you can see, that's working. God, I'm getting here. I think the left button, there you go, you can see your block with the left button. So that's working, but A and B are not working very well. It's like A's not so bad, but I think B's kick. So look, I'm pressing it, nothing happening. See that? I press it hard, it works. So I need to swap out. I think I'm going to do both those buttons. You can feel the difference actually as you press the D-pad here. You can feel it make a definitive click. Like those are quite new, the contacts inside, whereas these ones just feel a bit more spongy, probably because they've been like absolutely hammered, in games and things. Select and start buttons again are very clicky, but these just aren't. So I'll swap those two out now. So I've got you on Super Macro here. You can see this is a replacement button, just overlapped on top of this existing button. So you can see they've got contacts in the four sides there. Might be a bit challenging to get these off. I think it might be a case of putting something like this just on the edge there, heat one side, just try to lift it up a little bit. Need to be really careful. Hot air might be a better approach. I don't know, I might try that. But as you can see, the profile's not quite the same. The solder contacts here, you can see it's very close. It's the same in the other corners. So yeah, it looks like you need quite a large blob of solder there in order to attach that. You could perhaps bend the very tips of these, at 90 degrees out. That might help. I'm not sure, but they're not exact replacements. These are the nearest you can get on eBay. You can see it's a good replacement for that one there, for the the backlight switch, whatever it is. Or these start select things down here, but these ones are just a little bit bigger. But I'm going to have a go anyway. We'll take these off. I'll just see if we can just demonstrate now. Actually, it's not very clicky. It's not making a noise, whereas these, can you hear that? Yeah, these ones are just a bit worn, I think. So I'm just trying to support it from underneath there with that tool, and then heat the solder contact up. It's not the easiest thing to do, I have to admit. I might have to do this off camera. Yeah, I think I've got this down to a T now. It's a case of using something very, very fine, maybe even a scalpel or something, just to get under there like that. You can see that. And then obviously heat your contacts up with some solder and flux. Is that coming up? There you go, can you see that? That's lifted in that corner. So I just need to do this corner. I should be able to take it off, clean up the pads with some desolder braid. There you go, you can see I've got it off. That was not easy actually. So I'll clean around there with let's say some flux under solder braid, and then get some IPA and a cotton bud, just clean it up and inspect it quite closely. So there you go, you can see pads nice and clean there. So I need to get that replacement switch on now. So as you can see there now, that's just one just overlaid. I've not soldered it on, but actually the contacts are okay. You don't need to put tons and tons of solder on to try and get it to reach across a gap. They do actually make contacts with the pads there, so that should be okay. So just solder that in place. So you can see what I've done there is just tack one corner. We've got a big blob of solder, but I'll get some flux onto there, and that'll, you know, level off. It'll remove some of the excess solder. But it really is a case of tacking it in one corner, just inspecting, make sure it's as centred as it possibly can be, because it's got a smaller surface area. It's more important really that it's as centre as possible, because there's only a small area for the, you know, the little notch on the button there to make a contact. So we'll just get a bit of flux onto the corners here, not too much. I don't want it going all over the inside of the mechanism and stuff, but or the contacts rather, it's not really a mechanism. But yeah, just a little bit. It should just help with the solder here. So I'll do this corner. There we go. And this corner. It's difficult because I'm trying to solder viewing at a distance here, so that I can capture this on camera. There we go, that's okay. Like I say, the excess solder, I can just remove it with some desolder braid in a minute, I think. It's not too bad. I'll inspect it, clean it up. So there you go, you can see 4 nice clean solder contacts there. So we'll just repeat the process with this one, and then I can reassemble it, and hopefully everything should be working okay. So just final cleaning up now. You can see I got a bit of solder on there, so I had to get that off with a bit of solder braid on that pad. But yeah, the solder contacts look good again. It's just a case of just, let's say, cleaning all this muck off. There we go, both done, so I'll get the lid back on. And just before I put the lid back on here, there's a few things worth pointing out. I did clean up the corrosion there on the fuse. So that's another interesting point. If you get a problem with one of these where it seems dead, there are fuses on these boards. I think there's certainly a fuse there. There might be a fuse somewhere else as well. I mean, it's marked F2, so I presume there's an F1. I've no idea where that is. So inspect around the board if you get a dead one of these, looking for the F1, F2 components, and just make sure the measurers are short. The other thing is there was some corrosion just leaking down from this area here with the fuses on a cap here. Now, as soon as I put the iron on there to heat it up, I noticed that part of the cap came away straight away, not like over minutes or anything. It was like literally a second, just heat the edge of it. The end of the cap came off and it shattered in two. Now, it's not uncommon that you can damage ceramic caps with you know, too much heat, but it was literally for a second there, and I've never seen that before. So I think that had cracked. I don't know how. It could have been from an impact or something. I don't know, maybe from when it's been dropped, but I checked where that is. I can't find schematics for this. It's just across the supply. It goes between you know, the VCC line and ground. So I've just put 100 nanofarad replacement cap there. It's a slightly larger package, but I just thought to point that out. Everything else on the board there looks okay. All the other corrosion that was on this side has largely just cleaned up, really. There are some dull looking points here on this inductor, just a little bit, but it's okay, to be honest. It's not like battery acid or anything's leaked on this. I think it's just been some liquid. So in general, I think it looks okay. I think, yeah, we're good to reassemble and test the buttons, I think. So reassembling here, this is about the 3rd attempt actually. You've got to watch the ribbon underneath, because it can be really hard to get that ribbon to go in perfectly straight and all the way in. That's the fiddliest bit actually, is connecting the screen ribbon back to the PCB, just because you've not got much room there to do it. And I did just wipe the end of the ribbon with a bit of IPA, and that made the difference, so that got it working. I just tested it loosely, you know, with the back loosely on there. Just make sure you put the switch back in as well, and the way I would do it is put the switch into this piece here like that first, just to make sure it's totally aligned like that, and you can switch it off and on. Because if that plastic piece there is stuck into the inner edge up here, when you push it back in, if it's not aligned with the position that the switch is in, you can smash, you know, the switch off. I've seen people do that on PSPs before and Game Boy Advances. So yeah, that's that, and then it should all just go back on. Yeah, the volume slider, same thing with that. Just make sure that the plastic slider part is in the right place. I think that stays stuck on actually, if memory serves. I think, yeah, you can see it's stuck on there. so that's not a problem. So in the corners you've got tri-wings, you've got a tri-wing there, a tri-wing there. Just make sure that you've got the tri-wings left at the end. There should be 3 smaller, shorter half-length screws that mount the PCB into the case. You don't want to be sticking these tri-wing ones in there and then screwing through the front part. So all reassembled, just testing with a bit of metal slug. Advanced gear, as you can see, 5 button's working fine. The jump button's working fine. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.